So we are continuing the summary of Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort from the Wolf of Wall Street fame. And now we get to the last video I did was about prospecting, and this one continues that. And Jordan presents us with the 10 rules of prospecting related to the straight line selling method that is the theme of this book. So in the book, he just tells about the 10 rules, and then he gives a little text about each one. So I'm trying to summarize that. But remember, the book goes way more in depth, and I really recommend the book. This video is more like a refresher, or if you're not sure if you want to buy the book, this is kind of a summary to see if it's worth your time to read it. So rule number one, he goes back to say that when prospecting, we are sifters, not alchemists. What does that mean? That means that we are not trying to turn a person who is not in the market for what we are selling into a buyer for something that they don't want. We are not trying to transform anyone into a buyer. We are just trying to find buyers who want what we are selling. They can either want it badly, or they can want it a little bit. Maybe they don't know how to use the product to solve their pain, but they have to want it at some level. We are not trying to change anyone's mind. We're just trying to influence them and show them that what we have is good. So we are sifters, not alchemists. Rule number two, always ask permission to ask questions. And this is important because you don't want to come off as a grand inquisitor, as Jordan puts it. If you just start asking question after question, it turns into a very intimidating and very uncomfortable interaction. And you don't want that. You want your prospect to become comfortable with you, and you want him or her to contribute to you as you gather intelligence, and you both see if the product is right for the prospect. So one way that Jordan says, a very simple way that Jordan uses as a way to ask permission is just say, like, there's a couple of quick questions I want to ask you so we don't waste your time. You can say something like that. Oh, I want to ask you a couple of questions so I don't waste your time, or so we see if the product is a right fit for you. It's just simple as that, just a simple sentence. So the prospect knows that you're just asking some questions really quickly to assess if the sales pitch can go forward. And it's important to use the word so to establish a reason. And Jordan doesn't say that, but there's a very classic study in psychology by Robert Cialdini from the book Influence that says that if you ask something and justify with just about anything, you can get away with it. So if you go up to somebody and say, "Oh, can I step in front of you in this line because I need to take lunch to my grandma?" And maybe it's not even lunch hour. Maybe it's totally unreasonable that you say that. But just because you justified it, people are more likely to comply. So it's important that you say, let me ask you a couple of quick questions, so I can see so I don't waste your time. You have to give a reason so you can better influence the prospect. Rule number three, always use a script. Unlike me, who just has bullet points, always use a complete script, because that way you make sure that you don't skip any steps, you don't skip any questions. And if you have a script and you memorize it, you are way more free to focus on your tonality and your active listening, which are very important to remember, move the prospect along in the certainty scale. So always use a script. And a little spoiler for another book that I read that I'm going to make a video soon. Discipline equals freedom, not the opposite. If you have a plan, you are more free to change bits of it, or to improvise a little bit, or to focus your rational mind on other things. But you have to have a plan first. You have to have a script. Rule number four, start with less invasive questions and go to more invasive questions later. This is very obvious, or should be, because of course, if you're talking to someone, if you're trying to sell to someone, the first question is not going to be, oh, how much money do you have free in the bank? Of course not. You have to ask, less invasive questions first to assess, first of all, if that person is a right client, is a right, is in the market for what you're selling. And then you go little by little, establishing trust and going a little deeper in ways that make sense for the prospect to reply. And it ties very well with the rule number 5, which is ask each question using the right tonality. So Jordan talks about 10 different tonalities, but I think the 3 most important are absolute certainty, which is the one I try to use the most in these videos, utter sincerity, which shows the person that you care genuinely about them, and reasonable man, which is usually when you are closing the pitch or asking something of the prospect, like a reasonable, from one reasonable person to another. So when you're asking your questions, when you're writing your script and putting down the questions, try to think which is the right tonality, because some questions are more intimate. So you're not going to go all intense in the question, like how much money do you have free right now? Does your wife let you buy these things without speaking to her? Like you cannot be so intense with more invasive questions, right? And some questions you want to use the tone of I care about you, of sincerity. Some questions you want to be more laid back, more, oh, makes sense to you. What do you say? I give you a call next time, sometime next week. Makes sense to you? Is that reasonable? So think about that. That's the importance of having a script and using the right tonality. Leave your mind free to use the right tonality in each question. And this also ties very well with rule number 6, which is use the correct body language as the prospect responds to your questions. Remember, we have to use active listening. So if the prospect is replying in a like more, maybe even sad tone, like, oh yeah, I have this pain that is really hard, I have this problem that I cannot solve, you cannot stand there looking happy or like robotic. You have to listen to what they're saying and adjust your body language accordingly. This shows that you are really listening, that you are sharp, that you are on the ball, and that you're an actual human being. And you're not just caring about a commission, you care about the person. Rule number 7, always follow a logical path of questions. This should also be obvious, but it's important that you remember this as you're writing down the questions. There's a lot of questions that you may want to ask your prospect. For instance, if they're married, where do they live? If they have children, do they like their neighborhood? So if you noticed, I ask those questions in a very weird order because they don't have anything to do with the question that came before. And remember, we have to start with less invasive questions and go to more invasive questions. And if the questions are random, this is very hard to do. So, for instance, if you ask if he's married, the next question is if he has children or pets. If you ask where he lives, then you ask, oh, do you commute to work? Do you like where you live? So always keep a constant theme in your questions. Don't make logical jumps. Don't jump around. Rule number 8, make mental notes about the answers. Don't solve the prospect pain yet. We are still in the prospecting stage of the sales, of the sales call. So you don't want to answer every question, every answer of your prospect. You don't want to answer them with a solution to his problem. If anything, you want to amplify that pain. You want that pain to become very clear so that when you present your product, it is very obvious that your product or service is ideal for the situation that your prospect is in. So don't try to solve the pain yet. Just make mental notes. This is the intelligence gathering phase. Remember that. Rule number 9, always make powerful transitions. And Jordan gives 2 very good examples. In the end of the intelligence gathering phase, if you think that prospect is not ideal for your product or service, a very powerful transition that you can make is just say that you don't think that person is right for you, for your product. You can just say that, be honest. You can say, oh, John, I hear what you're saying, but unfortunately, the problem you're having, I cannot solve it right now with what I'm selling you. And this is very powerful because it's very honest. It's not common to have a salesman be so honest. And you can leave a door open for another sale in the future. If you have a good relationship with a person, like a trustful relationship that's full of trust. Maybe in 6 months you have another product, or maybe in 6 months that person has another problem, and you can call them again, and they're going to trust you more. So it's a very powerful transition. But of course, we want the prospect to be an ideal prospect for a product. So a powerful transition would be something like, so John, you told me this, and that, and the product I'm selling is this, and that. Or an even more powerful way would be, your problem is this, and that, and I'm selling this, and I'm going to tell you why this product is perfect for you right now. And then you go into the second part of your sales pitch. But just remember, you have to have a powerful transition, a transition that makes sense, that is honest, and that shows the prospect that you're not trying to score a commission, that you're actually trying to solve his problem. And rule number 10. What is rule number 10? Technical problems, just a second. Rule number 10 is always have a script. Rule number 10 is always stay on the straight line. Or as Jordan puts it, don't go off to Pluto. Remember, this is goal-oriented communication. But most times, the prospect will feel comfortable with you, hopefully will feel comfortable with you, and maybe he starts to go on a tangent. He starts to talk about things that are not related to the product or to the sales call or to anything that you talked before. It is just natural for us humans to start talking in tangents. And of course, you cannot interrupt your prospect, but also you cannot go away to Pluto with him. If he starts talking about something that is not related to your goal, to your product, you listen to him, you practice active listening, and when he finishes what he's saying, you bring it back to your goal. You say, oh, I hear what you're saying, and I understand why that is hard, or why that is fun, or why that is whatever the mood or the feeling that was conveyed was. Anyway, I think you're a perfect prospect for product that I'm selling, because blah, blah, blah. You come back to the sale. You listen to the person and you come back to the sale, because you're an expert. You cannot waste your time just talking about random stuff with people that you don't know. And of course, you cannot say that, but you have to have that vibe coming from you. You listen to the person respectfully, you understand them, you showed you understand with your words and with your tonality and your body language, and then you go back to the sales. So those are the 10 rules of prospecting. I hope this was useful, and see you in the next video.